This podcast is part of the Some Buddies Network. You're never alone when you've got some buddies.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we have a couple of wicked smart guests joining us on the show to discuss this very, very Irish episode of The Simpsons, or at least that's how it starts. We're talking about Homer versus the 18th Amendment. We're starting by having a drink to start all of our problems. We'll have one to finish them as well. But first, joining me as always, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How are you today, Rich?
You know, every time I think about this episode or keep talking about it out loud, I want to say commandment every single time. So
I do too, man.
Clearly, I'm starting off on the wrong foot, so I better shut up and go ahead and throw it back to you, the man, the myth, the best damn pet shop in town. It's Miles.
To be fair, I would actually be down with a pet shop that was actually also a bar. Like, I feel like that would be a lot of fun, but I would also come home with like 1 billion dogs. So I can see why they don't do that. But we've got a couple of very cool guests joining us today. On Twitter, you can find them at Simpsonsology. You've also may have read their book. The first one, I should say, they've had multiple books now. The Simpsons in the Classroom, Embiggening the Learning Experience with the Wisdom of Springfield. That one's been available for a while, and more recently, The Simpsons, Beloved Springfield, Essays on the TV series and town that are a part of us all. Both of these books are available now and written by Karma Waltonen and Denise Vernay. Welcome to the show, both of you. I guess we'll start with Karma, if you would like to start first by telling everybody a little bit about yourself and your connection to The Simpsons, and then we'll jump to Denise.
Right. So I have always been a fan of comedy. So when the Tracy Ullman show premiered, I was right there ready to watch it to see this like new Carol Burnett, right? To see what she was going to do on her sketch comedy show. And then there was this little bumper cartoon that I absolutely fell in love with. And I'm sure, as you remember, it's that one where they're putting the kids to bed. And when Marge was singing Rockabye Baby to Maggie, and Maggie was picturing how horrible the song was, I was like, that's it. I have always complained about this song because I have. And so they caught me right away. And so when they got their own show, I had my VCR fired up. And then ages later, have that VCR to record that old technology, while I was taking the aeroplane to Prussia. And then when I was doing my master's and I got the opportunity to design my own course for the first time, I knew that it was going to be on The Simpsons. And so I did that course, and now I've been teaching courses on The Simpsons ever since then. So for over 20 years now.
And you still teach there at the University of California, Davis.
California, Davis now, yeah. And so my freshman seminar runs here every couple of years, and it's The Simpsons, Satire and Postmodernism. And it was in that master's program that I met Denise.
Oh, very cool. Before I hear about Denise, your connection, I do just have one quick question on that, and it's one that I have my fingers crossed for. Do you still feel the urge, the desire, the popularity, if you will, of that course? Like, you still see a good number of younger students who are interested in taking a course based on a now cartoon that's been running for 30 years?
Yeah, they are. And what's interesting, though, is I have students who've been fans their whole lives, but I also have a bunch of students who were forbidden to watch the show.
Oh, so it's like they're forbidden fruit in a way. Yeah.
It's fruit, and they get to tell their mom and dad that not only are they doing this, they're doing it for college credit, sort of going against their parents' wishes.
Man, I wish I would have got credit for the things I was told not to do in college for credit. That would have been great.
No, it's great. And so, yeah, they're still excited. I mean, but I do remind them that, they've grown up in this world. They haven't been alive in a time when this show wasn't on. And so one of the things I have to actually do with them is try to paint a picture of what TV was like. One of the first assignments is they have to interview somebody who was, and this is usually their parents, but somebody who was alive when the show came out. And it's an interview about how TV worked. And in that interview, my students discovered that there was a time when TV stopped.
Yeah, like in the middle of the night, there was just gray.
Do not believe it. And then they also learned that there were only a couple channels. And when we were talking about it, last year, the year before, one of the students looked really uncomfortable all of a sudden. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she goes, I have to call my mom after class because I called her a liar. She said there were only a few TV stations back then. And I told her that she was wrong, that she must be misremembering it. And so I was like, "You have permission to step outside the room and apologize to your mother right now. Why would you tell your mother that she was wrong about her own life experience?"
That's like the most wholesome "I told you so," like between a parent and child, I think I've ever heard. That's wonderful. So Denise, you're up there at the Loyola University in Chicago. Is that correct?
I am. I'm at Loyola, and I owe Karma an apology because I took a drink of water while she was telling her story, and my Pusheen coaster was stuck to the bottom of the glass, and my reusable aluminum straw, because I am an environmentalist, made a clanking sound against the glass, and I'm very sorry.
Hey, if you wanted to push a political agenda, you didn't have to come up with like a clever story or make any background noise. We would have been happy to let you talk about anything you wanted to.
You step outside the hall and you call her immediately to apologize.
Yeah.
My spouse is actually a big Pusheen fan, and I don't even really know what Pusheen is because I'm Gen X, like Karma, and my spouse is a millennial. But so my story is remarkably similar to Karma's, even though she was in Florida and I was in Minnesota. And I remember Tracy Ullman and then watching on was it Tuesday nights first and then Sunday nights? That's right?
Either Tuesday or Thursday.
Was it Thursday?
I wasn't actually watching at this time, but through this podcast, we've done a lot of research, and I want to say it was Thursday, and it was competing with the Cosby Show at that time, if I'm not, or it might have been following, right, leading up to or following.
It might have started though on a Tuesday because they moved it at one point to compete with Cosby.
There you go. And so it's been around the calendar.
Yeah. Let me consult our timeline in our book.
Oh, yeah, I actually have a copy of that sitting right in front of me. I guess I could have used resources.
I think it was Thursday first and then Sunday. But and then I would record it, but not as religiously as Karma, and then watch it with friends in college, and I had Lisa on Ice memorized, and but then I also taught it at Florida State. I was a year behind Karma at Florida State in the master's program, and so she was kind of a mentor for me. And
Florida State, to confirm, is where you two actually met. It was during this master's program.
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool.
So we met there, and she was teaching. One of the requirements to get the prestigious master's degree at Florida State in English is to create. You don't have to teach it, but you have to design a special topics writing course. And so we both did that. And then, of course, why would you design a special topics writing course on The Simpsons and not teach it? So we taught.
I mean, you put in all the groundwork. Yeah, you don't want to let somebody else have all the glory.
Right. So we taught those courses, and I still have the Simpsons clue that several of my students bought for me at the end of one of those semesters. Aww. And I'm still Facebook friends with some of those students who adore me to this day because, of course, why wouldn't they?
I will say while researching for you guys, I did look up your Rate My Professor scores, and both of you are doing outstanding. Your students seem to really, really enjoy you.
Even Karma, because she's tough.
You do have some that say that you're not for a cartoon course. It's not easy, but I don't think that's a sign of a bad professor. I would say that you and I would probably not get along well if I was a student in your class, but that's not too likely to happen, so it's fine.
That's more of a reflection on Miles than it is.
Oh yeah, that's far more on me. If there was a rate my student course, I would definitely have like negative stars.
Right. Well, I will say one of the first times I taught it at Florida State, I had a student who kept getting really belligerent with me.
Oh my gosh.
In one class, he goes, "Why are we even talking about this? It's just a dumb cartoon."
Oh.
And I'm like, you signed up to take a class on it. What did you think was going to happen? And he was also one of those kids where he would say something like that in class, and the second I got him out into the hallway, he was all, "Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am."
Oh, so he's just flexing for his friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, it wasn't an easy A. They had to think about stuff and they had to write stuff. But, I mean, one of the assignments was creating a mini script. They are fun assignments, but they did have to get done.
Yeah, and that's just part of the course. I mean, if you look at a course description, I guess they might just see like, "Oh, Simpsons, we're watching TV." But you would have to assume in any English class there might be some writing involved.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit of analysis here and there.
Yeah.
It's very easy for me to reflect on this from the outside. At the time, I mean, like, not only did I fail English 1 composition, but I failed bowling. That's the type of level of student you were dealing with back in the day.
I think he was trying to get a degree in
beer.
What's that?
Were the bowling balls filled with beer?
Oh man, if that, maybe if I would have like come up with some elaborate way to get rich illegally, I would have gotten much better at bowling. But no, nope, just frat boys and other people that I wasn't really interested in hanging with.
Right.
Plus, Richie and I were usually drinking until like 6 a.m, and class at 11 at the time sounded late enough. But college was a hell of a time. You should probably try harder if you're listening to this in school now. I would recommend. Otherwise, you'll be. Well, I love the podcast, but it doesn't pay.
I had bowling in high school, and I was angry about it because they tricked us into doing math in gym class because we had to score ourselves the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That is funny. And yeah, I imagine, well, I don't know. I hear that the whole like math English thing isn't actually true in terms of like, there's the old, like some people are English thinkers or language-based thinkers, I should say. And some people are math-based thinkers, but I think that sounds pseudo-scientific at best.
Yeah, there's a lot of
naked guitar.
Not true.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Right on. So I do want to just talk a little bit more about, as much as you're willing to share. Obviously, you want people to sign up for the class, and I also want people to read your books, both of them. But tell us a little bit more about how you engage students by using a cartoon.
Denise, do you want to start?
Or do I want to start? Well, it's been a while, but what I've done, particularly what I did when I taught at Marquette, was I taught an intro to literature course, and every single item on my syllabus had a connection to The Simpsons. And I didn't necessarily make that known right away. So
Nice.
There was poetry by Pablo Neruda, for example. And of course, we read A Streetcar Named Desire. And so basically it was we would watch the episodes, but it was kind of the idea of how a show like The Simpsons, well, there's no other show like The Simpsons. People have tried, and Bob's Burgers is great.
Oh, it's not that there aren't other great shows, but there's nothing quite like The Simpsons and what it did for television.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, but the idea of, okay, well, you can be smart and like television, and that's okay, and that's something that we can establish and kind of work with, and that's something that I established kind of in the beginning of the semester, but it's something that I'm rambling. You should fix this later.
No, it's wonderful. Rambling is why you're here. Ramble on.
but basically the end result is seeing the richness in the world and in your pop culture, and then you get more joy out of the pop culture at the end of the semester, right? So watching A Streetcar Named Marge, for example, and then getting more joy out of literature and other pop culture because you see these connections everywhere. So it's just kind of like crafting the entire course around, hey, here are all of these things that connect to each other. Life is a rich tapestry. You get more joy out of your pop culture. You get more joy out of your Shakespeare. You get more joy out of all of these things when you see how everything is connected. And so when I passed out the syllabus in the beginning, I said, is there a connection on any of these things? There was literature. I mean, it was literature. There was short stories. There was poetry. There were plays. Some of it was in translation. It was from all over the world, Do you see a connection? The students saw no connection. And then I said, everything on this syllabus is related to The Simpsons. We will be watching The Simpsons. We will be discussing The Simpsons. And there was joy in the room, right?
Yeah, I honestly almost cheered just now.
And then, of course, it was work. But then we would analyze the difference between the show and the original piece of art and discuss how the show itself is art too. And how did they change the story, or what changes did they make in the episode to reach the audience, and why did they make those changes? So the analysis is just as important as the original work. Discussing the
Very
differences is just as important as the original work.
That's something that, from a very Ralph Wiggum-esque perspective, though, from comparatively, we discuss on the show quite often, of things that Richie and I are culturally familiar with because of The Simpsons. Truth be told, I have not seen the movie Rosebud. Mary Poppins too. Actually, there's an even more relevant example. I've never seen Mary Poppins, the actual movie, but I've seen Sherry Bobbins, and I get the cultural reference just because of how ingrained in society it is. So that's
I saw Mary Poppins after I saw The Simpsons, and it's funny. It's fun. It's way funnier, I think, probably. I don't know. Karma, I'm sure Karma saw it first.
Yeah, I saw Mary Poppins first, for sure. But and that's why so many of the jokes in The Simpsons resonated just so incredibly well. Like when you see her singing about a booze hound named Barney, and you understand what the original was about. It's a glorious, glorious episode.
Yeah. But I fell asleep the first time I saw Citizen Kane. But that was
the movie I was thinking, Rosebud. Yeah.
So, yeah. Sure. I don't know how I would feel about it.
I tried to watch Citizen Kane once when I was in young high school age-ish or something, and I was just I do not understand why this is I
taught in a film class in college, and honestly, if my professor had shown the Simpsons episode before or after, I think it probably would have helped a lot.
Hey, you should write a book suggesting that.
Maybe I should.
Because I do teach some film classes, though I don't teach Citizen Kane in them. But I tell my the reason Citizen Kane was impressive was mostly a lot of cinematography stuff that it kind of invented. It invented the crane shot, that shot that we completely take for granted and don't even think about now. And I've told my students, sometimes when we go back and watch older things, we don't find it as interesting. We don't find it as amazing. But that's because, we're used to that kind of thing. A lot of my students don't.
Sure.
I teach Alien a lot, and a lot of my students just think it's old or slow or something. But I have to talk to them about having actually a female hero of a sci-fi movie, and how groundbreaking.
See, that's a movie that I would say very much holds up. Yeah, that's a wonderful film. And yeah, you're right, though. It's kind of like you said with like your first lesson is often making your students understand how TV was different back then. Same concept. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So, Karma, is there anything else that Denise didn't touch on in terms of applying The Simpsons to the classroom that you'd like to add?
When I teach a whole class on The Simpsons, the way I do it is to divide sort of into themes. And so there's a theme each week. And so one week might be The Simpsons and politics, and one week is The Simpsons and religion. And so I'll set the first couple of themes, but then I let the students vote on what they want the other themes to be for the other weeks. But we're able to then take a deep dive into, what it is that sort of makes this happen. And so when we're looking at a couple episodes that deal with religion, we're able to sort of think about that. And I've actually had a lot of students who are foreign who sometimes take the class because they realize that learning about a piece of important American pop culture is going to teach them about America, this place that they're studying in.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I feel like if you were studying The Simpsons, it would help you, in a very broad stroke, understand a lot of things culturally.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then when I am teaching another, any other kind of class, there's usually at least one time in the class where I'll bring in The Simpsons, and it, which class it is sort of determines how I do that. But like in a health science writing class, I'll bring in one of the episodes where the Simpsons are dealing with healthcare issues. And so we'll look at that from this perspective. And one of the things I talk to them about is how most people learn a lot about how healthcare works from watching TV, right? That they'll sort of figure out, when I go to the doctor, it works this way or this. And my students are often really surprised that there's actually an article in the Canadian Medical Journal about The Simpsons.
That's fascinating.
It compares Hibbert with Dr. Nick, and it's a satirical article, but it is a serious one, and it was published, in a medical journal. But the point that the authors were making is they were satirically saying that Dr. Nick was the better doctor because he just does whatever the patient wants, whether it's good or not. And of course, their point was medicine should not be a consumer-based model. It shouldn't just be write the prescription because I told you to write me the prescription and I'm paying you, right? Sure. The doctor does have this specialized knowledge. So sometimes it comes into class that way, but really in any writing class, you can bring in The Simpsons because all of the Simpsons are writers, which is kind of incredible. They're all creators of stories. And one of my favorites, of course, is the one where Homer starts writing food reviews in the paper.
Yeah.
But we get to talk about authorship because, Lisa's helping him but not getting credit. And so we talk about plagiarism. But probably the best scene there for us in a writing class are when, he needs to develop, but not just by saying screw Flanders over and over and over again. And not, he needs to actually add with relevant material. And then the shot of him in the bathtub after his first bad review by the editor, it's like still not clean.
Forever unclean. Yeah.
And I talked to the students like, this is how it feels. This is how it can feel when somebody doesn't like your draft in draft workshop. This is sometimes how it feels when you get the paper back. And I said the conclusion didn't really work. And I said, and this is how it feels, when you have a book out there and somebody gives it a bad review, like this, that's just part of this process and it's natural and normal. And being able to laugh at it through Homer, I think loosens them up a bit when they need to share their work with each other in draft workshop.
Honestly, I might have to pull up a clip on that and just keep it saved on my phone for future therapy.
Let's make that a more popular gift than Homer backing into the bushes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. We'll start that movement. So we talked a lot about The Simpsons in the classroom. That's the book that you've had out about teaching in the classroom. You just had another book come out, I believe on August 30th, The Simpsons Beloved Springfield, essays on the TV series and town that are a part of us all. I have not had a chance to pick this one up yet, so would you two like to share a little bit about the process of this book coming out?
Well, it's been 10 years, so I don't really know how to begin talking about it.
Wow.
Do you like the cover?
I do. I love
I
Lemon of Troy,
absolutely
so
love
yeah,
this cover.
it's a fantastic cover.
Lemon of Troy is usually in my top 1 or 2 all-time favorite episodes. So yes, I absolutely love the cover of that.
Though my immediate gut reaction was to make the lemon face at it, not in like a bad way, more as a term of endearment in a facial expression. But yeah, so this is a collection of essays I've seen actually just on Twitter over the last. It's September 12th as we record this, so like almost 2 weeks it's been out now. I've seen a lot of the authors of some of the essays interacting with you on Twitter. That's been pretty cool to check out. It seems like it's a hit with everybody that has picked it up because it's currently rocking the 5 stars. So that's always a good sign, right?
Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. What are there? 19 chapters, comma?
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. I wrote one. Karma wrote one. We co-wrote the intros.
And you said this one was 10 years in the making?
Well, we've been talking about it for 10 years. It's probably like, what? We got the contract 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We put the call for papers out when? Right after the contract?
I cannot remember whether it was right before or after, but yeah. So at least 2 years since we got the contract.
Very cool. Is there an overall theme of this one other than obviously the Simpsons? Like, do you say like what type of mood this book would be for, or what should our what should our listeners expect from reading this one?
There isn't a central theme. What we were going for was trying to fill in some of the gaps in the scholarship. So, even though it's been on the air for a billion years, there are just still some things that didn't have anything written about them yet. And I mean, in teaching the class, there was just sometimes where I was like, it would be great if there were sort of a chapter about this or that or the other. And so what we wanted to do was to provide those kind of moments. Like there's this really nice essay by Summer Black about the Simpsons as parents and sort of where they fit in the parenting sort of talk about parenting. And that's something that had come up in my class before because my students grew up in a much more helicopter parent style.
Sure.
And of course, the Simpsons are free-range children.
Yes.
All children on TV and in good literature have to be free-range children because things have to happen to them. Right? You need a plot, and therefore they have to be interacting.
That makes sense. And I legitimately do think there's been a major culture shift in like the idea. I know a discussion came up with Stranger Things. I'm not sure if you're fans of that show on Netflix, but people have been griping about like that show being unbelievable due to the fact that the kids are allowed to like go out and play by themselves without supervision or go
Summer
to the mall
actually talks
without
about
parents.
After.
Yeah.
Oh, does she?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That some people have found that unbelievable.
Yeah.
But as a Gen Xer who grew up in rural Minnesota, that was my childhood. I was gone for hours on my bike and my
Same. Sun up to sundown was our rule. And then even after sundown, a lot of times we'd play hide and seek. We just had a more refined boundary of where we were allowed to go. But I mean, it was still blocks away from home. So
yeah. And so having that context and being able to have that discussion, and then now some parents think that that's irresponsible, that that's hurting your kids, right? And that goes against the past theory about having them grow up and to be more independent. And so having an actual chapter now that talks about that is going to be really helpful in class.
Sure.
So those were the kinds of gaps that we wanted to fill. And, like my chapter on sex and sexuality, there's been a lot written about sex and sexuality already on sort of like just the understanding of the sort of gay straight spectrum, especially with The Simpsons winning a GLAAD award for their episode with John Waters. But then I was like, okay, but there isn't anything out there about kink on the show. and consent on the show. And so that was, not to put too fine a point on it, the gap I was trying to fill.
See what you did there. On that note, we're part of the Somebody's Podcast Network, and I actually have a buddy who does a sex-positive podcast where I know he would be absolutely thrilled to have you on to discuss that essay. We could talk about that if you're interested later for sure. But that sounds like you two would just have a really fun conversation where you would be able to dive as deep into that gap as you would like
to.
Very deep.
Very cool. Well, on that note, I think that we should talk a little bit today about the episode that we're here to review, because we're actually going to discuss the episode Homer vs. the 18th Amendment, which originally aired on March 16th, 1997. This one is actually what I was told, or what they described it as in the commentary, is a toned down Merkin script, where Merkin wanted to take it much, much further, but they decided to back off on it just a little bit, and this is what they ended up with. The commentary for this one featured Matt Groening, David Silverman, Bob Anderson, Josh Weinstein, Dan Castellaneta, and Dave Thomas, who was a member of SCTV, and you may have remembered he was the fake contest winner a few episodes back. He was on they put him on an episode of the commentary. Now I wish I would have written that down because I can't remember. It was on this season 4 or 5 episodes ago. They pretended that he had won a contest and that he was a fake contest winner who had won the prize of being able to review an episode on the commentary. It was actually just Dave Thomas playing a really silly character the entire time. And much like that commentary, these guys are clearly friends and they just joke around a lot. So I don't have a lot of insight from the Simpsons creators themselves on this one, but that makes me even happier to have our guests Karma Waltonen and Denise Vernay to discuss this episode with us. This one opens up with no chalk gag, as a usual Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein script might. But the couch gag is a repeat of the Western. It's like a Western theme, and the couch starts bucking the Simpsons off, is how it starts.
No, see, I thought this was a Schwartzwelder. Am I totally wrong?
This one, they talked about that just a little bit. I think he did actually end up rewriting this one, but it wasn't his original, or possibly the other way around.
And Schwartzwelder rewrite. Gotcha.
Yes, I think that was the combination.
Yeah,
but Schwartzwelder does not do commentaries, so that just doesn't happen. So they usually will fill in his episodes with other guests. I'm sorry, Richie, what were you going to say?
I was going to say the parade scene definitely felt very Merkin-esque.
Yeah, it had a darker tone to it, for sure. This one opens up with Bart and Lisa walking into elementary school. Bart is giving his sister a hard time over the green dress that she's wearing, saying how she looks stupid, and I love Lisa's, "That's funny."
I don't feel stupid.
Yeah. I have to back up real quick before we go any further. I meant to ask this earlier of both of you. What was your favorite character when you first discovered the show, and who is your favorite character now?
Martin. And Martin.
Was your favorite at first? Is that what you're saying?
I think it's always Martin.
Always Martin. All right.
Martin coming in, Martin going out. Gotcha.
I always felt very much like Lisa and identified with her as someone who felt very misfitty in my town and in my family, and took refuge in being the smart girl at school.
Sure.
Well, where you're kind of like, at least my teachers appreciate me.
I didn't mean to already derail the conversation. It's just I realized I really was curious to know. I was expecting at least one of the two of you to say Lisa, truth be told. We were both of the type that as children we found the Lisa episodes to be a little bit boring or like the worst of the bunch. And as we're reviewing this show now as very immature adults, we appreciate her much more, though I can't wait till we can finally fully evolve and really identify with the character one day.
You don't think Lisa on Ice is one of the best episodes?
We're reserving all judgments of all episodes, including that infamous one, until we review them on the show. So we'll get back to you.
We already reviewed Lisa on Ice.
Oh, I already. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I messed up. Yeah, we did do Lisa on Ice, and yeah, I actually really like that episode. I think I put that one in my top 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Summer 4'2" is always my go-to Lisa episode. I love that episode.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah, the one coming up where Lisa does, like, doesn't she do, like, ice capades or something like that? I don't remember. I know that people always ask me about a specific Lisa episode, and I'm like, we'll wait till we review it.
Good save, Miles.
Yeah, whatever.
I identify with Lisa, and I appreciate Lisa, but I get just sheer pleasure from Martin Prince. He's got the best lines. He's just genuinely sweet, and he sees the beauty in the world.
He's very optimistic about a lot of things, for considering how poorly things have gone for him so many times. I love that he's almost got like a whimsy about him when he delivers his usually very funny one-liners.
Yes.
Before getting punched by Nelson.
Denise, is there a pinch of sage in your boot right now?
Nice.
There will be.
Martin would not have forgotten to wear green on this very specific day, and Bart quickly realizes that day is St. Patrick's Day, and he's wearing his usual red shirt, blue short combination, and instantly realizes his mistake. Though I do remember the occasional lighthearted pinching occurring on a St. Patrick's Day where somebody forgot green, but they attacked. This was a mauling, is what this was. You forgot part of his legs.
Yeah.
See, lucky for me, I went to Catholic school, so
uniform.
Oh yeah, and it was green and blue plaid, so I had green built in.
Yeah, I was thinking it's just like sorry, it's not part of the uniform. You can't celebrate this holiday. It is what it is. Speaking of celebrating the holiday, that is what Homer is very anxious to do, because he and the rest of the barflies are standing outside of Moe's Tavern. Homer's complaining that it's been St. Patrick's Day for hours now, and he's not drunk yet. We see Moe walk up, and he's got a bottle that's marked, or a canister's marked, poisonous green dye. And then immediately he starts off with a great line. Listen up, this is the busiest drinking day of the year. Where are the designated drivers? And 2 guys raise their hands. Beat it! I ain't got no room for cheapskates. We see that there is a full-blown St. Patrick's Day celebration occurring on Main Street. It would seem everyone's a little bit Irish, and there's a lot of Irish jokes, which they did actually talk about on the commentary. Dave Thomas asked specifically, why do you make fun of the Irish so much? And apparently that was a gag that was started by Conan O'Brien, and it just kind of stuck. And also, they've made fun of the Irish culture more than any other on the show, and as far as to this commentary's date, had never once received one complaint from any Irish organization or community.
Well, I think the Irish have a lot more sense of humor about that kind of thing.
Sure.
Than a lot of the other cultures do. I'd be interested in looking at sort of what they're counting. I mean, because we see Willie more than we see Irish characters. And
I'm Willie's Scottish.
Every time we see Willie, whether whoever was counting is counting, whether if he, you know what I mean, if he has to actually reference Scotland.
Sure.
Or being the Aberdeen Strangler or something.
Yeah, it also makes you wonder if it's excluding main character. It could just be is this only the background jokes? They didn't really specify. And again, on this commentary specifically, they were cutting up and laughing throughout the entire thing, which is really fun to listen to, but not really useful for educational purposes, right? You got to keep the laughs just long enough to keep their attention and not override the message. You're professors. Why am I telling you this?
Miles, come on. This didn't teach you not to get a child drunk in the middle of a parade?
Well, I mean, not with you Fuzela, Vizela,
Australia?
yeah, whatever those are, the soccer horns. I love that just comes out of nowhere. He's like, "Mom, can I get one of those horn things like last year?"
Right. And then she doesn't want to because he always throws them out the car window on the ride back. He's like,
"Yeah, but I won't this
With
year."
this time,
Uh, Bart just starts Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, wasn't that put in because they were trying to find a non-offensive way to have him get drunk?
I think that Merkin's. Yeah, I think Merkin's original script had like all of the kids getting drunk, like maybe finding a keg or somehow getting a hold of alcohol, and like all of the kids in town were going to have gotten sloppy, or at least a larger number of them than just Bart, and then they had to kind of like rewrite it back a little bit to make it so it was just Bart and a total fluke of an accident when the Duff Beer Girls come by spraying out free beer over the audience, which I like beer, but being soaked with beer on a like public parade out in the sun would just be the absolute worst. Everybody would be so sticky and smelly. It would be awful. But everybody gets really excited and kind of like opens up their mouth like you were at one of those like Japanese hibachi restaurants where they're flipping a shrimp at you. But it's beer. And of course, every last drop goes right down that horn that Bart is yelling through. And somehow it just kind of funnels in and he ends up chugging a good amount of beer pretty quickly and almost instantly becomes drunk.
That's exactly how it works in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Is this one of the lessons that you all do in college courses? Is all right when you're at your fraternity parties tonight, please check and see how long the alcohol takes to kick in so we can compare it to the art of television.
I haven't brought that up. I always count on my students having hopefully figured out how to drink.
Yeah.
To use one of those soccer horns to do it.
I mean, isn't it basically a beer bong?
It's not too far off. I mean, that's kind of the same idea.
Right, but he needs to take that in. He's getting beer boarded, like waterboard, right? And
Yeah.
he's kind of gasping at the same time that he's gulping because it's just coming in and you know.
See, that was actually the thing that I thought was funny is if he's yelling through this horn, I guess maybe it was like right when he was taking a big breath or something, but like to me it'd be like, just take the horn out of your mouth, buddy.
Right.
Like it takes a while to funnel through. And nobody likes beer the first time they try it.
No.
Except for maybe Homer's kid. This starts a sequence where we see that everybody in town has gotten pretty sloppy. Like Kent Brockman is trying to do an announcement about the parade and people are actually climbing up into his booth to get on television. Apu is encouraging people through a megaphone to get naked, which is always a good idea when you're drunk in public. What's that?
Kurt is down. He starts stripping.
Yeah, single Kurt Van Houten is ready to party.
He deserves this one.
Unfortunately, all of this fun and joy are brought to a halt when one woman notices that there is a drunken child in the middle of the street. And of course, that child is none other than Bart Simpson himself. And absolutely, he is staggering drunk at this point.
We've all been there as a 10-year-old.
Sure. The kids actually cheer for Bart, which is kind of funny. They're like, yeah, way to go, buddy. And all the adults, though, are almost quickly, like, you can almost see they're kind of gut punched. Like, they were all having a great time, and now they're like, oh, God, what have we done? We cut back to Mo, where everyone there is also getting pretty sloppy, but at least they're all adults. Only it turns out that, I guess with all that parade coverage on hand, it actually picked up Bart walking through the street drunk. So Homer has to realize that his child is drunk on television. Drunken Boy live appears on the screen.
After he declares that he's the Prime Minister of Ireland, of course.
Oh, yeah. Another, yeah.
With a
Irish
keg
joke,
on his head.
of course. With one peephole. We actually see Bart do a close-up frame of the looking right into the camera, kind of almost fish-eyed in a way, and he's like, "Hey, what are you looking at?" Before Marge kind of scoops him off camera. "What are you looking at? The innocent words of a drunken child. Well, I'll tell you what we're looking at, young man. A town gone mad. A town whose very conscience was washed away in a tide of beer and green vomit." Back at the Simpsons' home, we see that Bart is actually announcing that he's about to head to Moe's for a beer. Homer's like, "Oh, I'll go with you."
Yeah. No more drinking. I'm tired of looking like the world's worst mother.
"Oh, honey, you're not the world's worst mother. What about that freezer lady in Georgia?"
Nice save, Homer.
That doesn't make me feel better.
I honestly don't know if that's an actual reference or just a could be any true crime subject of the week reference.
Probably both.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if it was a specific one.
The 90s were a long time ago, Miles.
Either way, Kent actually announces that the only solution to this anarchy is prohibition. And Homer turns off the TV, scoffing, "That'll be the last we ever hear of prohibition." It's not.
Right.
They have a city hall meeting, and there's basically demands for prohibition while Quimby is talking. "You can't seriously want to ban alcohol? It tastes great, makes women appear more attractive, and makes a person virtually invulnerable to criticism."
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Helen Lovejoy's classic line. Chief Wiggum is also there, and he's kind of basically not really having any real they're going to try, or they're looking up the law to see what they could change, and they find that there's a 200-year-old ban that already has been on the book saying that alcohol is in fact already illegal. Just no one's been enforcing it.
And he doesn't keep reading the parchment for many, many days.
Right.
He does read that ducks are required to wear long pants in Springfield.
Oh my God.
And, that's the part that we get focused on for a second. That's the part that Mayor Quimby wants to.
Well, and that's the reason, I guess, that we don't see the other end of this law, where we find out at the end that, of course, it's already
Spoiler
been
alert.
revoked. Yeah, well, I think they've seen the show if they're listening to this, but sure, spoiler alert. My bad. Also, Iron Man dies.
Oh. Oh.
But I Love You 3000, and in this case, we see that Homer is actually unconscious, as are a lot of people at the town, or all over the town. Moe and Barney have fainted at the result that prohibition has been enforced, and even Dr. Hibbert's wife is fainting over this news. So shock and awe has fallen over Springfield as prohibition has been enacted, and that brings us to the end of our first act. And actually, guys, that is going to go ahead and do it for this week's episode of the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This conversation was a lot of fun. We so enjoyed having Karma Waltonen and Denise Duvernay on the show to not only talk about this awesome episode, Homer versus the 18th Amendment, but also their books, both The Simpsons in the Classroom and The Simpsons Beloved Springfield, both of which are available right now. Make sure you check those out, and of course, come back next week when we're going to complete the episode, Homer vs. the 18th Amendment, and we will have both Karma Waltonen and Denise Duvernay back with us again to continue discussing this wonderful show and this wonderful episode that we all very much love. In the meantime, make sure you follow Denise and Karma online at Simpsonology, and follow Richie the Whiz Kid at @TheWhiz_Kid23 I'm Mr. Most Days Off, and you can follow our show at Best Darn Diddly. Do make sure you come back again next week for the conclusion of this conversation, and of course, until next time, be cromulent to each other.